I'm still on the quest to find ways around thin fire. And the cookie cutter, where you use a stainless steel cookie cutter, line it with thin fire, and fire it with the cookie cutter in place. I've done that before, works really well. But I wanted to try without the thin fire. So I took the cookie cutter, filled it with frit, ran a bead of glass tack around the edge, spritzed a little hairspray, gently lifted it. You do get a few pieces that flake off, but when I tried one yesterday, enough of it stays on to keep your shape. And I really like the look. So next up, a St. Patrick's Day project using frit. And this is my own meadow mix. I take all the greens and anything with little bits of green, and then little bits of pinks and oranges and reds and yellows and blues, whatever I think would make a pretty flower bed or meadow scene. Pound it up, sift it, and that's what I'm using to do my shamrocks. So I'm going to fill this tray. I will fire them tonight, and I'll let you see what they look like tomorrow. I'm not sure what the project is I'm going to do for St. Patrick's Day. I've done a couple of trinket dishes, so that may be the first one. And then I have to think of things that are more useful. I have way too many ornaments and trinket dishes at this point. I did a couple with much bigger pieces, and those I'm going to squash once they've fused together. Now, I'm going to push things so that they're pretty close. These, I assume I'm going to have to trim, which is fine. I don't want this gigantic piece right on the edge because that will cause a problem. I can put that in the center and then find another smaller piece to put over there. So anything that looks like it's definitely going to fall off, I'm just going to move it to a little bit more secure spot. See if I can build up the center. These little bits, oops, let's get that ruler out of there. These little bits along the edge are just going to turn into tiny little frit balls that I can just brush away. If I try to brush them away now, chances are I'm going to destroy the shape because the glass tack is not the most secure hold, and if you're rough with it, it will come off. So I might just clean up these edges a little, but understand that I will definitely have some little teeny frit balls, which I can just brush off the tray when I'm done. And then as soon as the other kiln has finished, this will go in. This is the point where I often just play with them until I ruin them. So even though they're not perfect, I'm going to step away because once they're a solid piece, I can just trim them up with the Taurus saw. And this one, while not perfect, oops, is something that if I needed to trim it up, I could, but I don't really think I do. Here they are the next morning. A lot of little pieces jumped off, but that's fine. And my little refrigerator magnets came out fine. That one, the heart jumped off and touched it. So I will have to clip that off and just sand it down a little bit. Yep, these are all fine. And now I'm going to start the big shamrock. It's going to go in all by itself because those pieces may jump. And I don't want them to touch anything else. These are out of the kiln. And while they're a little bumpy, that's fine because they're all going to get squashed and then trimmed. So those are fine. Here is my large shamrock done firing. These are going in for a squash. I should probably trim that one and that one, but I think I'm going to wait until after it comes out because if I take them out now, it's going to leave a space. So they're on a tray or kiln shelf, sprayed with boron nitrate. I'm going to put another one that's also sprayed on top of it. I'm going to pile a few extra kiln shelves and a few extra kiln posts to give it weight, and then run it for a full fuse. Cardboard box is my little modified spray booth. I'm going to spray the two smaller shelves so that I can run a larger load. If you're thinking of buying zip spray, the boron nitrate, I do not recommend the pump. I bought it because I prefer pump to aerosol. It goes on gloppy, a lot of it is wasted. I really wouldn't recommend this. Here is the second shelf. It's a smaller one. I'm going to put another small one on top, and then I'm going to pile on the kiln posts. Wow, I got lucky with that heart. I didn't leave it enough room, and it went just to the edge, but not over. Thank goodness. This shamrock looks good. This one got completely obliterated, but I can just trim it back into shape with the Torosol. Let's check the shelf below. Beautiful. These need to be cleaned up and trimmed. And I think what is up next is a framed sun catcher, because that shamrock is giant. Beautiful. Just need a little bit of a trim, and they will be ready for the next step. So these turned out great. They need to be trimmed. This one, which was really thick, the shape is completely gone. This one, which was pretty thin, is actually pretty close to where I want it to be. I think that will make another trinket dish, although I have too many trinket dishes. But this one definitely is going to be a framed sun catcher. And I really like that heart with the dichroic bits. Let's not break them. I like that heart with the dichroic bits. This one was also very thick, and it was on the top shelf, so it didn't squash down quite as much and maintained more of the characteristics of the Murrini I used. So to get this one to look more like the shamrock, I'm just going to trim a little tiny bit. And I'm using a Milwaukee Inksol. Fantastic. It does not wash off or rub off. This one really got a little bit misshapen. So I was going to just put well, I guess I can put the cookie cutter on top and then just trace around the edge. Hold it down and then just retrace. And I'll just go and cut those off. So there's not really that much that needs to be trimmed off of some of them. This one, obviously, the whole thing is kind of a mush. And I'm not sure if I like that big white blotch, although if you flip it over, you don't even see it. So that's next. Just trace around them and then trim them on the Torosol. Of course, the advantage of thin fire, lining the cookie cutter and firing it in the cookie cutter, you don't have to go back and trim it because it will maintain the shape perfectly. But since I have a Torosol and I don't have any thin fire, this is working fine for me. The first of these squashed shamrocks for St. Patrick's Day are in the kiln. One of them is going to be a framed sun catcher, and the other is going to be a refrigerator magnet. I need to fill up these little spaces before I fire the kiln because I really can't stand running a half-empty kiln. So I've got a little pendant, a coaster, some framed hearts. I have a couple more things to tuck in there, and then this will be fired using a tack schedule. So it is the next morning. Let's take a look. Oh, very nice. So the next step is to pop this one into a frame and glue a magnet on that one. So the refrigerator magnet, I'm gonna have to buy more magnets because this is the wrong size. So I'll show you how to do it later. Magnet, I scuffed up the back And instead of getting the craft magnets, because they did not have the smaller magnets extra strength, I went into the hardware select section and got these ceramic disc magnets extra strength, because those will hold up the glass better. Scuff the back, E6000. Use the E6000 that's already open. I like these little tubes better. You can get a package of 5 of the tubes because it doesn't really last all that long once you've opened it. They start to dry out. And if you go with the larger tube, which is more economical to purchase, you end up wasting more of it. All right, squish that into place. And then this needs a 72-hour cure time. So I will put it glass side down on a shelf and leave it there for a few days. And end up with a pretty little refrigerator magnet. This one I'm going to slide into a frame. And then that will sit on the windowsill. The frames are thrift store finds. Whenever I go tag sailing or pop into a thrift store, I check the frame section. And anytime I find an inexpensive frame that looks like I could put some glass in it, I grab it. I usually don't pay more than between 50 cents and $2. Even something like this, which I found today. Gorgeous metal frame, purple glass set into it, $2. I'm not sure what I'll do with it, but eventually I will find a use for it. This is one I would usually avoid. I'm going to have to take it apart, take all this black felt off, but it is so pretty that it will be worth the bother. There's another one that is so pretty it will be worth the bother of taking it apart, and it was $2. The ideal frames are these, the ones where there are just little tabs and you lift the back straight up, pull the old glass out, and then, oof, sorry about that, and then you can put your new piece of glass in, and then you just push these back into place. You just drop it in and gently move these back in place. And then I often just sit it on the windowsill. Now, if it's visible, then I will take the pliers, because these are not hammered in enough. Then I'll take the pliers and bend it a little bit more, just so that when it comes forward, you can't see it. So this one I have to play with a little bit. Glass is slightly smaller than the frame. It truly does not matter. The pegs are bent back. The fact that they're bent, you will never see them when it's being displayed. And there we go. This frame worked out really well because it is so thick that you don't need to lean it against anything. You don't need to support it in any way. It can just stand up on its own.